right. Hey, everybody. Listen, I don't really know another way to do this because I'm not one of these YouTube broadcasters that go out and stand around Disneyland and blow smoke up your butt about how wonderful everything is. And it's so good to be back at Disneyland. Listen, I love Disneyland. I've gone to Disneyland since I was a kid, lived in Southern California all my life. But there's some things that you need to understand about what's happening at Disneyland right now in the course of the pandemic. As many of you know, Disneyland just opened a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to secure some reservations for my family to go, and we went, and we spent 2 days there. Be honest with you, the first day that we spent there was almost a complete waste of a day. And unless you really have your act together and you know what's happening there, the magic of what is there right now and the opportunity that's there right now can be lost on you. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second. But let's start by just going back and saying that right now, after the pandemic, Disneyland is back open again. Now, we had the chance to go to Florida and go to Disney World in January, back when it was a couple months, I think, after Florida first opened, and they had reduced capacity there. And being a sucker, as somebody who's been going to Disneyland for years and years and years, and being the guy who wanted to go, knows what it's like when it was a nice Sunday morning and there was nobody at the park, and it was a Tuesday on a downtime in the off season, as they used to call it. And you could go there and people would have just a great time because there was just nobody around. Everybody was having a great time, all that. Disneyland has reopened, and it's been open for about a couple of weeks as of when I'm making this video. It's the 16th of May. Disneyland's been open since, I think, April 30th was when they first opened. And of course, everybody's rushing to get tickets because they want to go back to Disneyland so much, and they want to experience Disneyland again. Our former pass holders, everybody who would do that. All of that's great. And it's exciting that people are able to go and get back to Disneyland again. Okay. And that's about as much positive as I want to say about it, because no matter how many videos you watch and these YouTube broadcasters, I can name about 5 of them on one hand. I've met most of them that make the videos that everybody tunes into to watch about how excited they are. And somehow they don't have a job or something. I don't know what they do for a living, that they're actually able to practically live at Disneyland and do these videos on YouTube for followers and tell you what a wonderful thing it is and how they're going around having the time of their life. And yes, there are some great things about going to Disneyland when they have lower capacity. That's why we went to Florida when we went. They had lower capacity. Always wonderful to go back during a time when people are actually kind of cutting it down, cutting back, and all that. And so Disneyland right now is limited to 15,000 people at each gate. So 15,000 people in Disneyland, 15,000 people in California Adventure. And I did get that from the gate itself, from the people that work the front gate. So I know that that's fact. The problem that they have is a couple of things. Number one, Disney's suffering from a lack of manpower because, when you furlough a few of your staff and you fire the rest of them after being closed for almost over a year. When you fire your staff, there's only going to be so many people that can come back immediately. They've gone out and found other jobs or found that unemployment pays more than what Disney pays, so they're not anxious to get back to work. Your furloughed employees come back, but then now you've got a labor pool that you need to rehire again. Again, the park just been given the okay to go mid-April. They've had less than 30 days to actually try to ramp up hiring. And if you can imagine what it's like to ramp up, there's a local casino in the area that's opening too. And they've got a job market that they have 2,000 open positions. And that's just for a casino. If you can imagine how many thousands of people Disneyland has to hire, just the process to get people through the orientation, to get them through the hiring process, to do all of that makes for a real it's a chore. I mean, I couldn't imagine the Herculean effort it would take for HR just to process that many applications, to do all the interviews, get people in there, get them costume, get it, so obviously with all that, when you think of all that effort in mind, it's going to be probably a solid 60 days, maybe 90 days before they can staff up to where there's any significant accommodation in terms of the number of people that are working there versus the number of people that are visiting there. Okay, and that's again at a reduced capacity. The parks hold, I want to say 40 to 50,000 people per park. That number is kind of flexible. It's gone up and down over the years, but that's kind of the general ballpark, I think, of how many they hold. So when you're talking about 15,000 and that's 25% capacity, that's saying 60,000. So let's just go, we'll go with that. What we found was that there were sufficient people that were there to be able to handle the needs of what we were dealing with. So again, but that's all going to change next week, and I want you to know that up front because it's going to be a problem. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going to be a problem for you unless you manage it extremely well. So anyway, they've got a problem with hiring, and they're trying to get people hired, and I get that. And the labor pool is kind of weird right now. So I know that that's going to be a problem to try to staff up that fast for Disney. The second problem that Disney has is it's a logistics problem. It doesn't matter what your buying power is. It doesn't matter how much you make in terms of your money, how much income you're bringing in from the parks. People are paying full tilt prices right now for tickets. All of that, none of that matters. How much buying power you have doesn't matter if the trucks aren't moving, if the pipelines, and I'm talking about oil pipelines, I'm talking about pipelines for product. If those pipelines are shut down, Dr. Pepper may not be making as many Dr. Pepper drinks as they usually do. All of the facilities that would be ramped up to provide product for such a major output as Disneyland and California Adventure, those supply lines kind of dried up when Disney didn't know when they were going back again. So just to get those supply lines back up and running again, logistically, I would say 90 to 120 days just to get those things up and running. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, you've got a shortage of labor and you've got a shortage of food or food product or pipeline. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means two really big things that you need to be concerned about when you go to Disneyland. We just got back yesterday, or last night, so I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The first thing is that you're going to, and it really involves the food and the eating experience. Okay, there's two things you do when you go to an amusement park. You ride the rides and you eat the food, and you walk around between now that. Okay. The food experience is what's going to set your clock in terms of how your day goes. And to be honest with you, you think your Rise of the Resistance was what set your clock, right? You get your boarding time and off you go there. No, there's no such thing anymore as just going to a restaurant saying, we're hungry, let's go eat, because you're between rides or whatever the case might be. There's no such thing. You literally have to plan your lunch. Now, that has a trickle-down effect on everything else you do, because just like with Rise of the Resistance, you can't, for example, have a early boarding group on Rise of the Resistance and plan on being anytime in California Adventure because it takes so bloody long to go from one end of the park to the other. You've got a half-hour time there, and if you want to go there and enjoy the ride, and they give you an early boarding group, you're kind of tethered to the Disneyland side of things for a little bit. So that's important. The next thing that you need to worry about is that when you order your food, there's two elements to the online ordering process. The first one is picking the window in which you want to order your food. And then there's the second part, and people don't get it. They think that your food's just going to be ready for you when you get there. But when you say I'm ready and you push it in on the app, there's another button that says prepare my order. What that does is that tells them, okay, you've shown up, and that's the only time really, even though you booked this window and you say you're going to reserve this time for me to go get my food, Disneyland, that really means nothing. That just is literally a way to stagger people across. So that hour or 2 hours, that's not demand. That's not time that Disneyland spends prepping food. That's really just trying to stagger people out to give it an even flow, because here's the magic part. You really don't get your food prepared for real until you show up and push the button and say, I'm here now. So you wait till 2:15. You think you're going to walk in and get your food. Wrong. You're going to wait another 20, 25 minutes to get your food in most cases, because when you push that button and you say you're here, a little screen pops up with a little three dot system that says we're now preparing your food. When it gets to that point, they say you're preparing your food. It's usually, like I said, 15, 20 minutes. Even then, after you show up, that it takes for you to get your food. And then you got to go find a table. If you haven't found one already, my recommendation is Find the table first, sit down, put your party there, hit your order 15 minutes before your first arrival time. So if you have an arrival time that's like 2:15 to 3:15, number one, they're not even going to let you say I'm here until 2:15. But at 2:15, you just plan on having your dinner or having your lunch at 2:30, for example. At 2:15, when it fires up, no matter where you are in the park, say I'm here. Prepare my order, start my order. Here's why. You could always get there 5 minutes late. It's okay. Your order's already done. It's sitting on the table. It's 5 minutes cold. Who cares? You get your food and you walk and you already have a table. For example, in New Orleans Square, I went ahead and said, I'm here when I was still riding Pirates of the Caribbean, knowing that there was going to be a 15-minute advance. And we did not know that the first day that we went to Disneyland. We didn't know that. So we ended up fighting everything. We were fighting trying to get a table. We were fighting trying to get the dinner times. We went there and said, okay, let's go, order something to eat. I sit down and say, okay, I'm going to order it online because they have all these signs, order online mobile, order online mobile. They shout at you, can't go to the window, got to order online mobile. When you order online mobile, the first thing that pops up is it tells you you can't have anything for 2 hours. And boy, if that doesn't piss you off when you're hungry and you've been riding rides and you're dealing with everything else you got to deal with, that's a problem. Okay. And there's something they really need to look at in what they're doing with the mobile ordering. Okay. So you've got the mobile ordering problem and the delay of the 2 hour window. So my biggest advice is go ahead and make sure that when you get to the park in the morning, order your food for the afternoon. Figure out, go on the app, figure out who's serving what kind of food, because another tip I got for you is that the normal staples that you would expect to find at one of the restaurants, no such thing. And that goes back to the supply line problem. If you expected a golden horseshoe and get a chili bowl, forget it. No such thing, no such animal. They don't have it. Even Stage Door Cafe, which is the little takeout place next to the Golden Horseshoe, they're on some weird, quirky menu. It was almost like they just had to get together a list of everything they could get on hand and say, what can we make out of this? And then they just divvied it up amongst the restaurants. None of them are serving, for the most part, what you would traditionally find at that restaurant. If you're a normal Disneyland person and you go to a restaurant expecting to find something at that restaurant that you are normally used to, like I say, the chili bowls, for example, at Golden Horseshoe, you're not going to get them. And you won't even get them at Stage Door. I don't even think they had hot dogs at Stage Door Cafe. They had some weird menu that wasn't even what you would normally find at Stage Door. So as far as ordering, go on the app the night before you're going to go, or the day before you're going to go. Call up the app and look at the menu. Don't make any presumptions about what the menus are going to be. Look at the app, look at the menu, look it up ahead of time to make sure that you know what it is you want and what you're going to do. Because if you have a family with picky eaters like me, or you have kids that don't want to eat a certain food and do want a certain kind of food, you may find yourself having to go to 3 to 4 different places to get your food picked up and go to a central table somewhere to put everybody down and sit and eat. Okay, that's the reality of the situation. To this side, it's just madness. Okay, it's just madness. Now, the reason you don't hear this from a lot of these bloggers and a lot of these idiots on the websites that make a business of going down to Disneyland, broadcasting, and telling you how great it is to have a churro and that, is because they don't have kids. Okay, they're not dealing with kids. It's 2 adults who can pretty much eat whatever they want to and have dinner before they go. They're not telling you about the realities of taking a family to Disneyland and dealing with what it's supposed to be like. So I really, ding that and think that that's why I think I finally needed to step up and make a video about it, because it can be a real mess in that regard. So, the queues, how long it takes to get on a ride. They say the rides go fast. The rides were 30 to 45 minutes, most rides yesterday. Now, talking about staff and talking about the COVID restrictions. The COVID restrictions are still in effect at Disneyland. You still have to wear a mask. You still have to socially distance, which means that people going on the lines 6 feet apart. Now, how does that affect a ride like, let's say the swings at Disney California Adventure, the Mickey's Whirlwind swings, the one that go around in that. That took us an extraordinarily long period of time to get through, because in addition to getting people on and off the swings, which is kind of a time-consuming process, they actually have to walk people in a group at a time, 6 feet apart from each other. So they have 3 staff members. Well, they used to have just one. They have 3 staff members, one at the top, one in the middle, and one down at the bottom, to actually tell people that it's okay for them to move forward. So what does that mean? Well, that means it takes probably 3 times, 4 times longer than it would normally take for a group of people just to go running in there and grab the swings. And now they're being kind of eked through little by little. What does that do for that ride? Well, what it does is it shortens the amount of cycles. That ride lasts about 2 minutes. And so if it's 2 minutes to get a ride and let's say 2 minutes to load, you're loading a new ride every 4 minutes. If it takes you 2 minutes for the ride and 6 minutes to load the ride, now you're in an 8-minute cycle. So it takes twice to 3 times as long to load the ride, to get the ride going, to get the people in the right place. And this applies to Star Tours. This applies to Space Mountain. This applies to a lot because they actually, on Star Tours, they have a divider in the seats, and they have to know if you're party 4, you got to be able to sit in this section. If you're party 2, you got to be able to sit in this section, and you can only be next to this person over here. The load times are doubled and tripled in terms of getting on the rides. So even when you're at a reduced capacity, 15,000 people, you think most of the rides would be a walk-on. And the reality, maybe a week ago, it was kind of 15, 20 minutes. It's 30, 35 minutes now because they peaked their capacity. They've ramped up. They're at 15,000 people in the park. And I'll talk about the swing in just a minute here, because if you think there's 15,000 people in a park, I got news for you. There isn't. Okay. So the load times take a lot longer to do. So just put that out there, that when you're thinking that you're just going to walk on a ride, it's not that way anymore because of the COVID restrictions. This also taps into the staffing issues I was just talking about, where Disneyland actually has a lot of staffing issues, because where they normally have 2 people working a ride, now they got to have 6 people working a ride. And what do you do with your labor pool if you can't staff the rides that are the critical ones? What you do is you borrow them from other rides that aren't. And that's why you see that some of the rides are working at reduced capacity. Some of the rides aren't working at all. They're down for refurbishments, things of that nature. And I'm not saying that Disneyland's misrepresenting the status of a ride by saying it's up for refurbishment, because I know things like Matterhorn really are. But in these particular cases, I think that it's a matter of getting the staff available to do those things. So your ride times and your ride queues are actually all longer. And yes, I know I'm bopping around a bit here because it all ties into each other. Okay, so you need to understand that it all works within each other as well. The next thing we talked about ride queues and the staff to manage them, and it takes longer. So your ride that you thought was going to be a half hour, or normally take a half hour to ride, is an hour-long wait. So you're standing in these huge long lines to wait, and you get hungry and you say, gee, I really want to get something to eat. Well, that's your second problem. My recommendation, if you're going to go to the parks at all during this next month or so, is that the minute you step foot in that park, you order your food online, because most of the time, with the exception of, I think, one of the Main Street restaurants, they would do allow some walk-ins. None of the other restaurants in the entire park will allow walk-ins or people just to come in and order food. You have to do it through the Disneyland app. And the bitch about that is, if you get hungry and you want to order something from the Disneyland app, good luck. So let's talk about crowds. The next thing I want to talk about is crowds, where they're saying, oh, Disneyland's at 15,000 minimum capacity. And we were like, whoa, this is fantastic. I remember those days, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, that you could go on a Sunday, or you could go in the off season when the hours were severely shortened. I mean, it hasn't happened in years now, largely due to all the annual pass holders that just, don't have kids and go there because they got nothing better to do. When those were down times, it was an amazing experience to be at the park. And so many people are trying to get tickets right now at the reduced capacity, just to get back to the park again, but then also to enjoy that reduced capacity. Okay. Here's the news flash for you all. Reduced capacity is a myth. Reduced capacity is a myth. Okay. And let me tell you why and what it means. I would suggest that probably half of the people that actually go to Disneyland make the jump to get a park hopper, because they have the experience at Disneyland, they experience California Adventure. You still have people that'll be faithful to one and not the other. But most of the people that could not get into Disneyland as their primary park chose to go to California Adventure as their primary park, and they bought a park hopper so that you could go back to Disneyland in the afternoon. Now, the rule had been 1 o'clock. They would release your California Adventure park hoppers to be able to go in after 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. to Disneyland. Now, my experience was we arrived at Disneyland at 10:30 in the morning, and we had California Adventure park hoppers to go as our primary. California Adventure was our primary for the second day we were there. We found out from the gate, most people want to go to Disneyland, which is why I talk about what I call the swing. Okay. And what that means is that if you've got 15,000 people at California Adventure and you have 15,000 people at Disneyland, let's work under the presumption for a minute that the 15,000 people at Disneyland wanted to go to Disneyland, and the other 15,000 people that are California Adventure, probably 10,000 of those people really want to go to Disneyland, but they couldn't get into Disneyland. They just took a park hopper at California Adventure so that at 1 o'clock they could get into Disneyland. What happens at 1 o'clock? Guess what? Your capacity jumps from 15,000 to 25,000. I won't say 30 because I know there's still some people hanging out in California Adventure. There's a little bit of flow back and forth, but let's use some real world numbers. 25,000 people, 10,000 people dump California Adventure in the afternoon and go to Disneyland. So what does that mean for Disneyland? Oh, you thought you were getting a 15,000 reduced 25% capacity? No, you're getting a 50% capacity. Okay, you're getting half capacity with a reduced staff, with reduced menus, with no indoor dining. And that's important because all the tables are out there. You have to fight for table space when you get it, with double what you thought was capacity there. So you're talking about, you expected 15,000 people. At 1 o'clock, suddenly you have 25,000 people in Disneyland. And California Adventure is, for lack of intents purposes, a ghost town. Okay. You can go on a credit coaster. There's a 5-minute wait, 10-minute wait. You walk on. I took my kids like 3 times in a row on a credit coaster. I just couldn't go anymore because I got my dizzy. But you can go there. And so that is the swing. At 1 o'clock, everybody dumps at Disney California Adventure and goes over to Disneyland that has park hopper tickets. Okay. And if my numbers sound a little exaggerated, yeah, there's a point to it, though. Whatever it was you were expecting as far as capacity goes, and you were buying into the idea that Disneyland was operating at 25% capacity, no. It's very possible that Disneyland after 1 o'clock is operating at almost 50% capacity. So reduced staff, reduced menus, reduced table space, no indoor dining, and all of that, extended ride times, extended ride handling times, so fewer cycles in the amount of rides mean longer ride waits. Take everything that you experienced before 1 o'clock and double it. Okay, make it double. Okay, and suddenly you find yourself back in this weird position that you see less people generally because Main Street's kind of almost empty, and you do that. In certain areas, it looks like the busiest Saturday you'd ever see during the midsummer. And why is that? Because the park is actually at half capacity or almost half capacity with reduced services. So you have half the demand, you may have half the staffing, but you don't. You have quarter of the staffing, quarter of the resources, quarter of the opportunities, quarter of the tables, and half the demand. Okay. And if that doesn't bother you or doesn't frighten you about going, well, then I'm not doing my job, because there's a way to manage it, but you just need to be pragmatic and realize that that is the case. That is what is happening right now. And I'm going to give you one last piece of advice. I heard it from the gate yesterday that starting next week, which would be the 3rd week of May 2021, they are going to increase gate capacity from 15,000 people to 25,000 people. 25,000 people then being 40 to 50% of park capacity. Okay? Apply the same logic I just gave you about the 1 o'clock park hoppers and the people that are coming over to Disneyland. Take that number, 15,000, change the 1 to a 2. Now you've got 25,000. And then at 1 o'clock, figure that all but maybe 10,000, maybe another 15,000 people. Suddenly now you're at Disneyland with 40,000 people and a 60,000 full capacity. okay, using their numbers, full capacity being 60,000, you've got minimum 40,000 people hitting Disneyland with the ride, with still the same rules on the rides, the same rules of the capacity, the same social distancing, the same things, because they don't show any sign of changing it, even though the CDC just came out and changed their rules. Disneyland doesn't show any signs of changing any of that. You have to understand, for the next few weeks, if you go to Disneyland under these conditions, assume you will be going there at full capacity with everything that you didn't like about full capacity: long lines, long food lines, bad availability. All of those things are going to be working together in the perfect storm of crap. Okay. Knott's Berry Farm doesn't open until May 30th. They've had some pass holder preview days, but they're not going to open until May 30th. And I'm kind of wondering if that wasn't really a more wise thing to do, because I think they're ultimately going to be better staffed. They gave themselves a little more freedom to staff up, a little more freedom to see what was going to happen with the changing CDC rules, all of the things that all go together to make that a thing. And when they open, they may be a little bit better prepared to handle the volume of people that want to come into the park and how to manage that. We'll see. We're going there on the right around May 30th. I guess I take it back. I think they're actually opening a couple weeks earlier, like May 14th or something. We're going there May 30th, a couple weeks after they open, just like we did with Disneyland. So I'll maybe make a follow-up video on that to see if Knott's is handling the situation any better than Disneyland did. But right now, Alien Pizza Port is closed, which is a big hub for people that were dining. So it's literally between your meals and your lunches and dinners are going to completely govern your entire experience. And that includes where you sit down, where you actually eat, what food is available, when you order it, how you budget your time on the rides around it. I could not stress this more to you. And if you're going to be there in the afternoon, my recommendation is we did the opposite, had a time of our lives on day 2, because like I said, day 1, it was discovered by landmine. We were just tripping over everything and every mistake you could make, no matter how many of those shows. And I watched half those broadcasters and the adults that go there and tell you what a great time they're having. That's bull. Okay, it's a big, nice, shiny coat of paint that they put around the experience because Disney's helping drive traffic to their websites and giving them free admission and doing all the perks that they get for doing this. So everything's all hunky-dory. I'm not saying it's a bad time. We had a much better time the second day that we went. But if you're going there on a one and done type of situation, you better listen to this video, because this is the most critical thing you're going to need to know. The last thing I can tell you is that if you're going to go stay there in the afternoon, one of the things that we did, and it was just so much easier. We went to California Adventure in the afternoon. We just went the opposite direction of everything. We tried to knock out some of the things. And for a lot of people who want to ride all the big rides, they just can't do it. Because the lines are so long, you just can't do it. But if you get there early enough and you've hit the main rides that you like to ride, and you may be there for a couple of days, and it's not important to you that you touch everything you need to touch OCD wise at the park, ride a couple of the rides, your favorites, go do that. Enjoy the park in the morning for what it is, because it's beautiful. If you're not eating and you're not riding rides, that park is amazing. It's all open and nice and everything I told you it was at the beginning of this. But we went and did the opposite. About 1, 2 o'clock, we decided, after we ate our lunch, we headed over to Disney California Adventure and had an absolute wonderful time there. Radiator Springs Racers was like 30 minutes wait, which is unheard of. If any of you know anything about DCA, you know it's a 75-minute wait on most days. The Incredicoaster was 10 minutes. Like I said, I took my kids on it 3 times. Essentially, when the park dumps into Disneyland and Disneyland starts to hit 75% capacity, 60%, 70% capacity, DCA kind of turns into a little bit of a ghost town. And that's really nice if you want to hit some rides. I know that there's probably not as much there for people that are traditionalists and like Disneyland and that are at DCA. But for my kids and for me, it was a much better experience, because when you have less people there and less lines, the staffing problems, the food problems don't present as much of a hassle. But everything is magnified by a factor of 4 if you go to Disneyland. Anyway, so as you can see, home team, pass holder, got the whole pass holder shirt. There it is. See, pass holder credentials. Know what I'm talking about. I had a pass from the pass holder program when they first got back to it in 1997, and have been a pass holder every year since. So I know what I'm talking about. Nothing bad on Disney. Totally understand why they're doing the things that they're doing, but just understand that this is not the rosy picture that you're expecting to see. You'll be glad you're at the park, but if you don't follow kind of the real rigid instructions on how to set your day up, you're going to find yourself miserable. So that being said, under the circumstances, have a great time at Disneyland. Let me know. You put it down in the comments, whatever. Let me know what you think in terms of the experience overall that you had. And we will talk to you soon. Bye.